welcome to The View from ADB. We are in Frankfurt for the Asian Development Bank annual meeting, and today I'm joined by Ravi Karunanayake, Finance Minister of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving the opportunity.
So, Minister, when you started your mandate in January 2015, of course, you inherited quite a tough beat, many would say. The fiscal deficit was at around 7.4% of GDP last year, quite high. The balance of payments was deteriorating. Public debt is high, around 40% of it is denominated in foreign currency, so it's not an easy situation to tackle. In the previous Rajapaksa government, what in your opinion went wrong? Was it merely, some analysts say focusing on corruption, others say there was excessive debt taken out to finance some of these booming Chinese infrastructure projects in the country? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that it was just a democracy that was there. They're thinking that they'll be there for life. So as a result, they fashioned it in a dictatorial manner. And there the return was only corruption and not return to revenue of the government. So with that you had a lot of illusionary projects that came about, which was more political in nature, and they basically pumped in billions where the actual cost was millions. So you couldn't see the balance go into corruption, but the people have to pay for the total billions that have been taken. So that brings you into a debt crunch where you have the debt servicing higher than the government revenue. And with the new government that comes in democratically elected, going on the good governance and clean governance, you are confronted with opening the system up. And when you do that, how are you going to do? Basically pay what is expected and also have the development which the people have expected you to do so. So that was the biggest problem that we inherited.
And I know that you are making it a point to really try to crack down on corruption. You actually mentioned in one of the seminars here that you're actively trying to follow dubious capital outflow from the country, but it's not so much the tracking that's the problem, is that when you do track, those other countries are not necessarily sharing information about who is doing this capital outflow. What is the situation?
Thank you. You were present there. That was very appreciated, because what we want to say was when we find that there has been a trail of money has gone out of the country, it goes into 3-4 countries, and when you ask them, please respond with banking information, give us the bank numbers, stony silence is there. So they pontificate on one side clean governance when they don't themselves do it, because they'll have outflight that is there. So these are the areas that we developing countries find hard to grapple with. And sometimes the duplicity is something which is unbearable to take on when especially poor, vulnerable economies like us.
Mm-hmm. There's quite a strong level probably of hypocrisy as well.
Absolutely, nothing less than that. So what we are basically doing is trying to inculcate, say what you say, do what you say instead of, do what I say. And at least get that feeling that we are able to move towards the correct destination.
And now, recently the IMF agreed to giving Sri Lanka $1.5 billion in loan to try and avoid a balance of payments crisis. Now, this has strong conditionalities. Basically, tax revenue has to go up, spending has to go down. And you also hinted this week that maybe these conditionalities are not necessarily tailored perfectly to Sri Lanka. What is your comment on that?
Yes, I mean, you go to a bank at the time of need, and if you come out completely bashed up, then what's the purpose of going in there? I mean, firstly, governments are elected by human beings, and there's a sense of expectation. Now, if you are not part of what is running down the economy, you're bringing clean governance onto the table, you're bringing fiscal discipline that is expected, and you have to confront with the past sins that is brought forward and not carried forward, then why should you be punished? And that is exactly we as the new government have to confront with. So we discussed with this IMF, and as for them it's a stony silence, As for them it is same judgmental factor on all countries.
Would you say it's also a matter of the problem, the one-size-fits-all problem when it comes to these conditional loans?
Well, that's the feeling we get. But I must say World Bank, the AIIB, the ADBs have been very responsive. But the IMF is a bank of last resorts, and they yield this thing. And the sense of combination, each one basically looks at, have you got the IMF endorsement? And that was one of the biggest problems we have. It was not necessary. We did have balance of payment problem, but owing to the economic turbulences, we thought it was abundance of prudence to go into that rather than confront one and go, which can be even harder.
And I guess also if you implement excessively tough policies on the population, then I guess the voters that voted you in for change, you might start losing them.
That's absolutely the case. So we had to balance it in a manner which is acceptable as well as which meets up with the expectations, you know.
And when, basically as finance minister at the moment, what is the best approach, do you think, to deal with a situation that is very dire, but also not try to upset, I guess, the entire economy and the population as a whole?
Well, what we have basically done is trying to diversify the economy, and instead of aiding ourselves, trading ourselves, where we try to get foreign direct investment instead of running after loans all over, and also trying to basically call upon our good friends who have been isolated during the last government to come back and try to help us in that process. We have succeeded up to now, but that's a more short-term approach. The longer-term approach is engaging them to do what is expected, and that is to ensure that they help the country in investments.
So I guess this is also requires structural reforms which have far longer
We
terms.
believe in reforming is the best way, transforming the economy is the best way. Downsizing, correct, right-sizing the government, getting the private sector to come forward, and those are the areas which will bring a sense of competitiveness, and that sparks off the investment confidence.
Well, good luck with all of these endeavors, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. All the best.
Thanks.